We thank you.
Reconocemos que tú eres la fuente de toda bendición.
We acknowledge that you are the fountain of every blessing.
Por eso venimos ante ti
That's why we come before you, God,
confiadamente,
trusting you,
sabiendo que tú nos escuchas.
knowing that you hear us.
Señor, vamos a comenzar
Lord, we will begin
esta actividad.
this activity.
Señor, te pedimos
Lord, we ask
que
you,
tu presencia sea real y verdadera en medio de nosotros,
we ask that your presence is true in here with us,
que tú puedas ministrar,
that you can minister,
que esta información
and that all this
que
information
vamos a estar recibiendo
that we will be receiving,
podamos usarla.
we can use it.
Señor, en el nombre de Jesús,
Lord, in the name of
te
Jesus,
pedimos estas cosas
we ask you all these
y te
things,
damos gracias.
and we
Amén.
thank you. Amen.
All right, good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Liz Morales. I've probably introduced myself to many of you. I am with Unstopable You Ministries, and I just want to thank you so much for taking out the time on this beautiful Saturday morning and coming and discussing and listening to what we have to say today about domestic violence, an issue that does not get talked about very often, but does need to be discussed, addressed, and obviously we need the resources, right, to do that. So thank you again. Thank you for taking out the time. Thank you for House of Reconciliation.
Yes, thank you.
For Pastor Alex, for Jahira, for opening their doors, for donating their space, their beautiful space. Because of them, we were able to do this. So again, thank you. Unstoppable You Ministries, thank you, Jen. Thank you for our team, because again, this was a vision that we had, and if it wasn't for House of Reconciliation for joining us in this vision, we wouldn't be able to do this. So thank you. Thank you for our sponsors. So we need to thank our sponsors, obviously, because again, the food that you have downstairs, the beverages and everything like that, it was thanks to Wise, Giant, Walmart, Sheetz, Bob Evans, Sam's Club. We have Memory Lane Sweet Shop, Little Curious Playhouse, who also is one of our sponsors, Jimmy Hagan's, Cheryl Roberts Glenn. I mean, it was a collaborative effort from the whole community. So thank you, thank you, thank you for helping us out. Okay, so yep, and we definitely want to, because again, we could not do this without the community, but also with our community leaders. So thank you to Carol Hill Evans for stopping in this morning. I hope everyone had a chance to meet and greet her. She was also here, so we thank her as well. We would also want to go ahead and recognize, and we did our dignitaries. So Jen, did you want to kick it off and recognize all our panelists and those who are with us from the community?
But before I bring up our panelists, please raise your hand if you did not check in at the registration or get a raffle ticket. There's one ticket per person. So Isaiah, if you or someone can come to them with the red, yep. Yeah, or even the panelists.
So make sure you have a ticket.
One ticket per person.
And also an index card.
And an index card and a pen. My dad has two hands up. But only, don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. So we want to make sure we have a lot of great raffles, thanks to some amazing people who are able to make it and who are not. And we just, winner chicken dinner.
Right?
You know, everybody has an opportunity.
Make sure you also get an index card, because again, we have panelists that are going to be up front, and the questions that are going to be asked are questions that you write down on your index card. We want to make sure that we're answering those questions that you have.
Right.
So please get an index card, write down a question, and then we'll be collecting those index cards as well.
While the young men and women are coming around with index cards, pens, and raffle tickets, I don't know if you had a chance to look around, but there are randomly, we chose 10 seats. That's our silent chair exhibit. And what we have are those chairs are reserved for men and women who did not survive domestic violence. And they are all from York County or surrounding counties. So throughout this event, and even the last hour where it's networking and eating and vendoring, I encourage you to take a look at those chairs and the profound effect of their stories, and that should help clue you in on this horrible epidemic. So that's the silent chair.
Their organization and the resources that they offer. And then we'll go ahead and kick off our panel discussion with asking them some questions that you may have. Once we do that, we will break after the panel discussion to have lunch and then also have some raffles. So make sure you have your ticket, make sure you have your index card. We'll have lunch and then obviously announce the winners downstairs. So hopefully you guys can stick around for the whole thing.
Absolutely, and definitely support the vendors and pick up resources. So without further ado, Jahira, Pastor Alex and Jahira, if you could take these two seats. And we just are so grateful for each panelist. So Pastor Alex, you can sit here, Jahira, you sit there. And we have a little gift for each person. So again, this is Pastor Alex and Jahira's, this is their church, House of Reconciliation. So next we have Officer Anaya, representing the West York Borough Police Department, law enforcement. So this is a very comprehensive panel discussion. Next we have Ms. Phoebe Yates. She is a trial deputy prosecutor representing the district attorney. So again, your gift is on your chair. Absolutely. So don't leave without your gifts, ladies and gentlemen. Next, I would like to bring to the table Ms. Wanda Muley. She is representing York County Children, Youth, and Families. Thank you so much, Wanda, for being here, kind of like this spur of the moment. Then we have Ms. Dawn Gatling for New Dawn Soul Therapy. Anytime you're dealing with this nightmare, counseling therapy is always appropriate. So thank you so much, Dawn, for being here. Next, Ms. Kamila Whedon, our domestic violence survivor. Thank you is just not enough, so I appreciate you having the courage and taking the time to be here. And then last but not least, Ms. Joni Wolf, representing YWCA of York. Can we please give our panelists So again, you'll see they're representing. So you have spiritual leadership, you have law enforcement, you have legal, you have the preservation of families, you have therapy/counseling, you have a survivor's perspective, and you have YWCA that encompasses so much, but they have shelters and other resources. But again, each of the panelists will go through one at a time, and with 5 minutes. I don't want to have to gong y'all. Stay on track. So, are you good with the agenda, or you want to go through anything? Get started. See everybody. Okay, so we're going to start with our spiritual leaders. If you can briefly, in about 5 minutes, discuss who you are, what you want the audience to know, and how your church is able to help, and what does this mean to you, having this? Jahira's going to translate. Pastor Alex will speak.
Dios bendiga a todos en esta mañana.
God bless everyone.
Mi nombre es el pastor Alvarado.
I am Pastor Alvarado.
Por la gracia del Señor llevamos 20 años siendo pastor.
By the grace of God, we've been pastoring for 20 years.
Estuvimos trabajando 14 años con jóvenes delincuentes
For 14 years, I worked with delinquent youth
en una agencia aquí en York conocida como Alternativa Rehabilitación para la Comunidad.
I work with alternative communities, right? Art, alternative communities.
Tuvimos la experiencia de ser consejero
I was a counselor there,
y ahora con la experiencia de ser pastor
and now with the experience of being a pastor,
hemos mezclado ambas
I have mixed both
para poder ayudar a la comunidad
in order to better help the community.
y a todas las personas pues, que tengan problemática
And all those people that have problems
en el área de abuso físico
in the area of physical abuse
y verbal.
and verbal.
Durante este tiempo tengo una experiencia
During this time that I've had the experience,
donde pues hemos recibido muchas personas que tienen problemas con abuso físico y verbal.
I have received many people with problems.
Sabiduría
God has given us the wisdom
para poder ayudar en cuanto a lo que es la mente,
to help the mind,
el alma
the soul,
y el espíritu.
and also the spirit.
Y uno de los textos que Dios nos ha dado como parte de la revelación
And one of the texts that the Bible verse that God has given us as part of Revelation
es que el salmista dijo en el Salmo 32,
is that the psalmist said in Psalms 32,
mientras callé mis huesos envejecían,
while I was quiet,
mis huesos
my bones
se envejecían
became yes.
y mi verdor se hizo sequedad de verano.
Amen.
Así que estamos trabajando en el área espiritual.
So we're looking at the spiritual area.
Así que nuestras puertas están abiertas
Our doors are always open
y nuestra oficina para poder ayudar a otras personas.
in our office in order to help other people.
So next we have Officer Anaya from West York Borough Police Department. Again, you have pen, you have an index card. Please feel free to write any questions. It could be to the general panel, it could be specific, and we'll have someone collect those questions once we start the actual discussion. But Officer Anaya, could you please explain how does the police department interact, and what advice and just guidance, what would you put out, and who you are?
Like she said, my name is Officer Naya. I've been with West York Borough Police for 3 years. Prior to that, I was in Baltimore City for 4 years. So I've been in law enforcement for 7 years. I do normal patrol. I also do the community relations aspect. So any community events you'll see me at. So when it comes to domestic violence calls, our county dispatch will call it out as a domestic. They'll tell us if it's verbal, physical, weapons, no weapons. Any information you can provide when you are having a domestic incident, giving 911 as much information as you can. If it's just threats, verbal, physical, description of the person that you're calling about, if they left the house. Any information is just great for us because sometimes we have to look for them. Sometimes they're not in the residence. Also, should be interpreting or not, but so when we go on scene, our interaction with each other can be brief or it can be very long, depending on the situation. If it's just something verbal, sometimes the two conflicting with one another just have to separate for the night. If it's physical, it can lead to just charges, or it can lead to an arrest. If it's charges just being mailed, obviously they won't leave the residence at night unless we can separate the family. Services really goes down after it goes to court. That's when you usually meet with the services that provide your law enforcement, which you will speak with the other two women about. But yeah, so my services basically are on scene, or you can come into the police station. It can be anywhere from just guidance to an actual arrest if it calls us for that.
Outstanding. Thank you, Officer Anaya. So next we have Ms. Phoebe Yates, the trial deputy prosecutor. Ms. Phoebe.
Thank you, and thank you everyone, and thank you pastors for hosting this event. As she said, my name is Phoebe Yates. I'm from the District Attorney's Office. I am a prosecutor, so we're pretty much the next step after the police arrive and charges are filed. What we do is we prosecute anyone if they are charged criminally in a domestic violence situation, and from there starts the court process. We have numerous people. I brought with us, brought with me Katie Shive, if you want to give a wave there, Katie. That's Katie Shive. She is one of our victim witness coordinators, and specifically domestic violence. She handles sex abuse cases as well as felony domestic violence cases. We have victim witness coordinators. I could not do what I do without them. They are a gift to God, and they coordinate everything between the victim and they help provide resources to that victim and help them through the court process. But they can put you in connection with all the different resources in the community. They'll reach out to them through it, and then they'll be there through the entire court process, because sometimes it can take up to a year, if not longer. But one way I kind of think about what our office really does is I think about, I like stories, so that's the best way I can do that. One thing that really touched me was I had a case come in, and there was a victim. She had been strangled by her husband, and he was arrested, and when I came into it, defense had filed a motion, and she did not want to cooperate at all. She did not want to testify. She did not want to have to get up and see him charged criminally. So we had a court hearing. I had to pretty much subpoena her to bring her in. She testified for the defendant, and after she got off the stand, I took her into the back room with the victim witness coordinator, and she was really nervous. I could tell she had just maybe not told the whole truth on the stand. And I just began to talk to her, and she began to cry. And I said, you know, something tells me that you've been going through this for a while, and I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna help you get out of it. And from there, we began a relationship, and it went on, and it ended up being that she testified for us in trial. He was convicted. After the trial was over, he's incarcerated, and she got her kids back. She got a job. She got new living, and we were able to help and support her through the entire way. And by the end of the process, I still talk to her today. She was a totally different person. She had lost herself during the marriage and during the abuse, and it was awesome to watch her grow. And she came up to me afterwards, like a month after the trial, and was like, "Thank you so much for what you did." And I was like, "No, thank you. You have changed my life because you had the courage to get up there and do it. And in that trial, the one thing I said was, the defendant had tried to silence her, and today was about her finding her voice and no longer being silenced. So that's the best way I can maybe say what we do.
Phenomenal. Thank you, Ms. Phoebe. Yes. I'm so grateful you shared that story, because domestic violence is like a dirty little secret nobody wants to talk about, and it can make you numb because you hear and see it all the time. But again, at this workshop, we also want to concentrate on creating and maintaining healthy relationships. So you brought out a positive story or an example that when you seek the services and you find your voice, you can move forward and succeed in life. So this does not have to grip people in a negative way for the rest of their life. So thank you, Ms. Phoebe, for sharing that. So next we have Ms. Wanda. You got 5 minutes, share a little bit of what you want us to know.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Wanda Muley. I am with York County Office of Children, Youth, and Families. Our office investigates child abuse and neglect, and then we provide services in the home to the family with the goal of preserving the family whenever possible, making sure that the children have a safe place to be. And in the event that the child is unsafe, we can work with the families to create a safety plan or look for an alternative placement in order for that child to remain safe. When it comes to domestic violence, we do work with families where children have been impacted by domestic violence. It could be either that they are in the line of physical harm or just being in the environment of domestic violence has a lasting effect on children. There's been a lot of studies into the trauma that children experience during domestic violence situations, even if they are not the primary target. So we are making sure that we are working with many of the providers up here at the table, making sure that we can refer them for services, and making sure that the children are able to kind of process what happens, as well as build for the future. We just encourage anyone in the community that if you find that a child is being abused, neglected, or in a situation where domestic violence could result in some type of injury or trauma to the child, that you contact our office so that way we can have one of our intake workers do an assessment to assure that child's safety. And feel free to ask any questions.
Outstanding. Thank you, Ms. Martin. So next we have my dear friend, Ms. Dawn Gatlin of A New Dawn Soul on the profession of therapy. Dawn, you have a mic.
Well, thank you very much. Again, I'm Dawn Gatlin, and I'm very honored to be here. Thank you to the pastors and the leaders of this house, and to Unstopable You Ministries for just doing this. We don't talk about it enough. I'm the founder of A New Dawn Soul Therapy, and just to give you a little bit of background, I actually have been in almost every position up here on this panel. I started counseling when I was a junior in college, counseling my peers, but my very first job was as sexual abuse specialist for Dauphin County Children and Youth Services, and I did that for 5 years. And then after that, I became a therapist, family therapist, chief operating officer. I've been a sociology and psychology professor. The reason why I'm giving all this to you is because I take all of that. No matter what my position was, no matter what my title was, I was always a therapist and always a counselor. But I always ran into abuse situations and helped people through them. And I pull from all of that to help people connect to their souls. I professionally did counseling for many years, but I always found that there was something missing. Trained in cognitive therapy, and that means that has to all do with the mind. But what about our body? What about our spirit? And that we cannot heal without that. Not completely. We can make some improvements, but we can't completely heal. So I take people on the very long, oftentimes painful, but very beautifully rewarding journey of discovering who they are in their souls. God has equipped them. He has equipped us with everything that we need to live an abundant life. And so I really teach people the how. I don't know if you ever sat around and you heard like, oh, that sounds good, but how do I do that? How do I heal? How do I recover? So I walk alongside women, men, children, and families. I hold space for them as they navigate their own journeys. And as you can imagine, it's very individualized. My journey doesn't look like her journey, doesn't look like her journey, doesn't look like your journey. And so we come together and we hold space to do that. I invite you to visit me downstairs. I have business cards, sign up for the email list. I realize that soul therapy is not a concept that we hear very often. But I've experienced freedom and healing, and many of my clients have also. And if you don't take anything from this, I want you all to know that you are loved. You are so loved.
Yes.
You are valuable.
Yes.
You are worthy.
Yes.
And you are more than enough. The one consistent theme that I have seen over almost 25 years of doing this, domestic abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, mental and psychological abuse, is that they all have one thing in common: men, women, children, everybody. And that is what I call the case of the INEs. I'm not enough. You're enough. You're so enough. Thank you.
Yes. It's so imperative to not take our hurt and our pain from abusive relationships and trickle it down to other family members, our children, and the new relationships. So how do you heal the heart? Well, now you have a resource that maybe you knew about or didn't know about. Again, Unstoppable You Ministries, with the collaboration of House of Reconciliation, we have a comprehensive panel of resources for York County, for you. Thank you, Dawn. Next, we have Ms. Kamila Whedon, our domestic violence survivor. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Kamila Whedon. I am a survivor of domestic violence. 8 years ago, my ex-husband, I would say that now, we was married for a really long time after we went to jail. I'm so happy we're divorced. My ex-husband, he shot at me 11 times. I was hit once in the back.
Oh my God.
Well, the gun was pulled 13 times. 2 of them were in my face, but neither one of them fired. He has been in jail for the last 8 years, and a little while after it happened, I began to speak. I spoke for YW Access York. I spoke at your college. I spoke for the DA's office. I spoke for victim advocates. And this time it seems like it's totally different. That time it had just happened. I was dealing, I was still healing with it. Now I am at the latter part of the situation. It's been 8 years. He was sentenced to 20. So soon I'll be dealing with him being out of prison. And it's a journey. Being a domestic violence survivor, it's so many different things, but it is a roller coaster. It never ends. The abuse, the trauma, I still have dreams, I still have nightmares, I still have pain and issues with my body because of the injury that I was inflicted. But a lot of it is mental. A lot of it is just working on my mind and my spirit and my soul every day to try to remain strong, deal with what happened, and just try to live a normal life. I don't think people understand. They think that because you were in a relationship with a person and something bad happened, it was somebody's fault or somebody deserved this, or it's not as severe as an attack on the street because these two people knew each other, so it had to be something more going on, and it's not. It is like a foreign attack because you don't think that anybody who loves you would try to hurt you or kill you. It's hard to walk around with that on your back and to know that there's somebody can love you so much but want to hurt you so bad as well. And it's something that a lot of people don't talk about. They don't talk about domestic violence. They don't talk about the arguments and what see it more often these days. I'm raising my niece now, and she came from a broken home, and she thinks that a man yelling at a woman is normal. Two people who go together, they fight. That's what happens. They push each other, they yell at each other, they're mean to each other. That's the generation that is happening now, because it's not talked about. The young females are not taught to stand up for themselves, or the young men are not taught the respect that they're supposed to give to women when they're in a relationship. And so then it's trickling down. I have her in my life now, and I have to tell her that people know that's not right, that's not how you're supposed to be loved. So it's a hard journey, but I feel like as long as you keep God in your heart and just have something to love my son, my niece now, who I have, my family, that's just what keeps me going. I've always been a fighter. I get that from my mom and dad.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Last but not least, we have Ms. Joni Wolf representing YWCA.
Hi, thank you everybody. My name is Joni Wolf, and I first want to thank you for sharing your story, coming forward and finding your voice. That's really brave and courageous of you. So I just want to say thank you for that. And thank you so much for having us here today. We're really excited to be here. So my position at the YWCA York, we are the comprehensive domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking services provided here in York County. As far as domestic violence, we have a lot of different things. We do a lot of intervention as well as prevention. Most people know about our shelter services and things like that, but we do a lot more than just shelter services. We do case management in there, so should someone just need help figuring issues out or any sort of question that they may have, we run a 24/7 hotline. So if you have a question at 3 o'clock in the morning, you've just been up all night being like, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do, give us a call, we're there for 24/7. We also have counseling services, and all of our services are free and confidential. So we don't report to police. The only thing that we report is any suspected child abuse. That's what our mandate is. But anything other than that, we really don't discuss outside of between us and the survivor. So we have our counseling services. We also have transitional housing. So even if you haven't been in our shelter and you're getting out of your situation, we have the option to be able to do transitional housing where you can stay up into one of our 11 apartments for about a year. We have that available. We also have legal advocacy services. So if you are going through the court systems, maybe there's a trial going on, we also have advocates that will sit with you and go with you through the process. Whether you, for emotional support, for any sort of thing, just to explain kind of what's going on. Maybe you need a drink of water because there's a lot been going on and you just need a moment. We've done that. We will sit and play cards with you and your family just to create that little bit of sense of normalcy going through this hard time. We also actually have a lot of prevention services as well. So we're not just necessarily intervention, but we're prevention as well. So we are in all of our York County area schools, K through 12, and we're also in the colleges as well, teaching about healthy relationships. What does respect look like? We all know what respect is, but diving down deeper to be like, well, what exactly does it look like? The fighting type of thing is a very common thing that are like, oh, but they're still respectful. Well, are they if they're doing this to you? Does that really look like respect? Oh, they like to go through my phone a lot. Is that truly really respect? Right. Things like that. So we're just looking at those behaviors of what people are doing and trying to teach them those healthy relationships and what that looks like. And that's not necessarily just between relationships, dating relationships. That's also looking at your friends and how they're acting towards you. So we look at it as a whole. So we do a lot of that kind of stuff. We do a lot of community awareness events just like this today, so that's why we're really excited to be here. We also do a lot of community outreach, so we try to get into healthcare providers. We have someone whose sole job is to go to healthcare providers, teach them about screening. Should someone come to them and say, I don't feel safe in my home, that they have the available resources to be able to connect someone with resources, anything like that. So that's a lot of what we do. I've been trying to fit everything that we do into a quick, but really, if you ever need anything, like always feel free to give us a call, because if we can't do it, we will try and find something, some sort of option or someone else in the community that can help you out. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Tony. And thank you again to each and every one of you for coming out, being here, being a part of our panel, and sharing your resources, your stories, and just being a supportive resource for the audience and for our community. So thank you, and thank you. All right, so at this time, we're going to go ahead and begin with
Any
asking
other questions to collect?
our questions. So while Jen is collecting some more questions, I'll begin with asking our very first question. All right, so what would you say are some of the misconceptions that you may know or hear about when it comes to domestic violence? Any specific person, anyone on the panel, I don't have a specific person.
Jahira, did you want to come up here and stay so that way if Pastor wanted to? Yes. So anyone can address that first, just, keep it brief, and if anybody wanted to chime in, y'all know what to do. Y'all can
I think
we have other questions.
I think a big misconception that there is, which is a big deal in my role, is people always think it's the woman that's being abused. Sometimes it is the man. Sometimes it's the son or daughter abusing the parent. That's when I come in and I listen. Once the scene is safe, we always make sure the scene is safe before we even get anyone's side of the story. That's important for us and not only for you guys. We'll go in, we'll separate the parties. My partner will talk to another one, my partner will talk to another one. Then me and my partner will talk to each other, like, what's this side story, what's this one? We look at the evidence, we see, we just evaluate everything, how people are acting, who seems a little more scared than the other, is one of them trying to intimidate the other one into telling the wrong story. So, to tie that all together, we don't come in thinking it's always the woman or always the smaller person of the relationship. We don't always think it's the children. We have to really look at a whole, who is the abuser in this case, so we don't do a false arrest.
I think, I think another big misconception coming from my world, there's a couple things that come to mind. First off is thinking that it's anger management. I think that that's a big misconception, that there's a lot of things that go into play prior to even a physical assault. There's a lot of verbal abuse, and so that another misconception I'm thinking of just us here talking is thinking that, well, they didn't hit me. That is a big misconception. There's a lot of verbal abuse, emotional abuse that happens prior to even someone putting their hands on someone else. And when it comes to anger management, a lot of people think, well, it was just, they came home, they were angry, and so that's what happened. Well, what we didn't see is the escalation happening prior to that. Anger management, in my opinion, is more of getting in arguments with road rage, with people at the grocery store, with people, just really anybody and everybody. Whereas what we see in domestic violence is that there's that escalation happening. Well, they came home and dinner wasn't ready precisely at 5 o'clock. Then, they came home and something else happened, and then something else happened, and then something else happened. And then finally we see the incident. But yet if someone maybe calls them during this escalation process, they pick up the phone and say, hey, how you doing? You know, what's going on? And then can hang up the phone and immediately go back to how angry they were at their partner. And that's really good anger management, in my opinion. But we see kind of that escalation, and that's kind of the difference that we see between anger management and domestic abuse.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Anyone else?
Before we go to the next question?
I was just gonna say, from our point of view, not all people that are charged with domestic violence go to prison. And that's not saying that if you do something like what she shared, you're not gonna go to prison. But we do, in our office, we've been really working on rehabilitating if it's appropriate, given the severity of the charges. But sometimes I always say that people aren't inherently bad people. And generally, when something is going on in a home and maybe there was a punch thrown or something like that, or it escalated some way, or somebody threatened to kill somebody, if you find the source of what's going on and try to find a remedy for it, it helps a lot, because we're not always looking to throw someone in prison, whether it's financial that's causing the root of the fight, or it's somebody can't find a job. We use our sentencing guidelines and the sentencing to help remedy that situation if possible.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ms. Phoebe. Okay, so the next question, this is specifically for Ms. Kamila Beaton. What was the biggest sign you may have ignored before the domestic violence started?
Well, the physical violence, it never really started. It was that one incident, the attack. But what I could see before, it was like I didn't really realize all the signs until after it happened, until I was away and out of the situation, and then beginning to go through therapy and to heal physically and mentally. Then I started to realize certain things. I knew there were problems, but I think I just blocked them out and ignored them so much. And then what was crazy was I found out that the things that I was being accused of, and he was saying, that was what I started. I thought that he just always wanted to be around me. That he always wanted to be around me. He always wanted to be with me. That's why he never rushed for me to come back from the store. That's why if I worked too late, we were mad, or you didn't know exactly where I was, you were upset, or every time I went to my family's house, you had to go. Or I went here, you had to be there. If you were working and I was out of the house, it was constant phone calls, constant phone calls. I'm thinking, oh, he just really wants to be with me. Sometimes it was annoying, and he would just say, oh, that's how he is. He just gets on my nerves. That's how he is. But I didn't realize his sole existence depended upon me. And the moment that he felt like I may not always be there to aid his existence, he didn't want me to be around at all. Because the last words were, if I can't have you, no one will have you. And that was the last thing that he ever said to me, even through the whole court process and everything. He never spoke. He would never speak at court. That was the last thing he ever said to me.
Wow.
And so that sticks with me. It doesn't matter
judge said in court, we can't find, something had to happen in that house. And something didn't happen in that house, something happened in his head, that he felt like he was a ruler of me, and that if he didn't want me to be here on this earth, then I wasn't gonna be on this earth. That's what happened. He decided that he wanted to take my life in his hands and be done with it. And it's not a coincidence that both times he tried to really end me, the gun was pointed at my face. He didn't want my family to be able to bury me properly. He wanted me to be, he wanted to destroy me because he felt as though I was not going to be there to hold him up and to be what he is. And that's what I would say to everybody. If you feel like you're with a man and his whole life and everything about him depends upon you, it's not healthy.
That's
It's
right.
not a healthy situation. The one thing I can say is I wish I would have listened to people around me while I was with him. There was my family and my friends that kept telling me things, and I did not want to listen. I knew what I was doing. This was my relationship. I should have listened. That day, my best friend at the time told me, get out of that house. Get out. I don't have a good feeling. Something bad is going to happen. I'm like, I ain't going to do nothing to make me do nothing. And now what happened. So I would just say, let your pride down. Let somebody else help you. Listen to other people. Don't always think that you always have it and you have the answer for everything or everything. Because there is, people can see certain things in your relationship that you might not be able to see, and they can feel a certain energy. And I just wasn't seeing it because I was wrapped up in what he wanted me to be wrapped up in.
Thank you, Kamala.
Thank you, Kamila. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that's very important too. She said something very important. The behaviors that he showed, even though it didn't get physical until that one incident, you mentioned about the behaviors. If you were working late, you had to check in with him. If you had, those behaviors, we have to kind of understand and know what are healthy behaviors and what is not. That constant checking in or that constant dependency and so on and so forth. So thank you. Thank you. All right. So with that being said, this is kind of like a little bit of a piggyback, not to anyone specific, but what is being done with the abuser as far as help that they do not continue to do the abuse while they're in jail? Let's say if they're serving a sentence. What kind of help and resource is being given to them while they're in jail, and who's helping them to heal so that they don't continue to do the abuse? Anyone?
The abuser. Yeah, how's the abuser being?
The abuser, I'm sorry.
I can't speak to what happens in prisons or in jails, but I can speak to a program. It's through Spirit Trust Lutheran called Domestic Abuse Solutions, and we have a lot of victims that come to us that still want to stay with their partner. They still love their partner, and while some of that may be difficult for some of us to understand, we as advocates need to understand that this is what they want during this time. So we can offer a resource, and through Domestic Abuse Solutions, sometimes it's court mandated, sometimes it's socially mandated by a partner saying, I won't be with you anymore if you don't go through this program. And it's about a 20-week program, and they really teach them to be an equal partner. Because some of the dynamics we see with people who abuse are, the centrality of the victim. We see those rigid gender roles where, if you are a man, this is how you're supposed to be. If you're a female, this is how you're supposed to be, and this is how you're supposed to act. It really kind of breaks down a lot of those stereotypical things. So, and really teaching them to be an equal partner and understand, again, going back to respect and what behaviors that they were doing prior to whatever happened, really tries to get them to understand that. So I know that that's really one big resource here, specifically in York County, that's run by some fantastic people in the county that we offer our survivors.
Thank you. Before we go on to anyone else that wants to answer that question, We do have some Spanish-speaking men and women that are here, and so Jahira is going to translate. So you let me know what that looks like and when. So do you want?
You can speak first, like slowly, and then I'll read.
Okay. All right.
So we probably should allow, like, if you have a question, allow her some time to translate that question, and then the answer, then allow her some time to.
And then as far as the panelists as well? Okay. Did anybody else want to, did you want to translate what Ms. Shona said, or is a lot of information? It's going to be tough. Was there anybody else that wanted to respond? Probably you two, about what help the abuser is getting when they are in jail.
La pregunta es, ¿qué ayuda recibe el que abusó cuando está encarcelado en la cárcel?
Before you go on, I think that the question came from me.
Okay.
And I think that if people here speak Spanish, they should know the answer. And I just want to say what she said. Because I understand that I was abused.
Okay.
I was abused very, very badly. And I'm here because of the grace of God. So I understand my point as a victim, but I understand her. And she said, what about when he comes out? So who's doing what and where and with who and when? So she say when he comes out. That's the question.
Okay.
So it's not the victim. Who's doing what with him there? So when he comes out, he doesn't go after her. So
Okay.
she can have a peace of mind and she can be free of thinking every day, because he's in jail, but she's still trapped. She's still captured. So who's doing what with him or with whomever is so not with God that is doing that to, or feel like they have the right to do this to us? Who's doing what with them, or gonna put them in jail, thinking and planning what they're gonna do when they come out?
Okay.
So we feel safe. So what she said was, and I'm going to talk in Spanish now because you all heard what she said. Para los que hablan español, la pregunta mía fue, ¿qué hacen con el abusador? ¿Qué hacen con la persona que está abusando a la víctima? Porque en el caso de ella, el esposo le dio 13 tiros de bala, ella está viva por la gracia de Dios. So, la pregunta mía fue, ¿qué hacen con él cuando está preso o cuando está donde esté? Para que él sane, para que él he must have, I'm sorry, no me él tiene que tener un problema. When I'm saying he has to have a problem because he's acting like that. So él tiene que tener un problema. ¿Quién está haciendo algo para cuando él salga de la cárcel, ella no se sienta con miedo? Porque lo último que ella recuerda de él es que él la abusó y que él le dijo, tú no vas a estar como nadie porque yo te voy a matar. So, lo único que ella piensa es cuando él salga, él la va a ir a buscar otra vez. So, ¿quién está trabajando con él en la cárcel o donde quiera sea que esté? Para que cuando él salga, esté sano. So, esa es la pregunta. Ella está diciendo que aquí en el Lutheran Church,
Spirit Trust Lutheran Domestic Abuse Solutions.
hay un sitio aquí en York que es de una iglesia que trabaja con las personas que están abusando, porque las víctimas algunas veces aman tanto a la persona que quieren continuar con ellos. So, quieren como quiera estar con ellos. So, ese programa ayuda al abusador o la persona que está atacando, la ayuda para coger esta terapia con la persona que es víctima, para que entonces ellos puedan tener una relación saludable juntos. So, ese programa existe para que las personas que son abusadas y quieren seguir con sus parejas puedan seguir adelante juntos.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank
We want to try and keep everything orderly, so if you have a question or a comment, if you can write it down, get more index cards, but we want to make sure that we're giving our panelists, thank you for the translation, so you all just work back and forth.
I would first encourage you to sign up with
Office of Victim Advocate.
Yo los motivo a que ustedes se firmen con la oficina de York Advocacy.
You can get a text message or a message notifying you when they will be released from prison.
Ahí le envían un mensaje de texto o un mensaje, le notifican a usted cuando él va a estar fuera de la cárcel.
Additionally, they won't be released from prison without a parole plan.
Inicialmente no van a salir de la cárcel sin un plan de probatoria,
Which is where they're going to live, what they're going to do, and I would encourage you to go and speak to the parole board.
y yo también les motivo en ese plan, dice dónde van a vivir, qué ellos van a hacer, y también les motivo a que ustedes hablen con la probatoria.
And as the victim, you have the right to give your opinion, to say what you need in order to feel safe.
Y como víctima, usted tiene derecho a hablar y decir que ellos pueden hacer para que usted se sienta segura.
So there's that option.
That's okay.
Additionally, they do offer a number of things while incarcerated. One would be a mental health evaluation.
Ellos ofrecen varias cosas mientras están encarcelados. Una de ellas es una evaluación mental.
The other would be a drug and alcohol evaluation.
La otra sería una evaluación de drogas y alcohol.
There's numerous groups that meet as well as counseling.
También tienen variedad de grupos y consejería.
But ultimately, and I hate to say this, as much as we want people to change, we can't make them change.
Y lamentablemente, por más que queramos que la persona cambie, está en ellos el cambiar.
But I will say that sitting in a bathroom-size cell all day
Y estando en una celda de tamaño de un baño todo el día,
gives you some time to hopefully find Jesus.
le da tiempo para encontrar a Jesús.
Because that's really what
Thank you, Ms. Phoebe. Excellent. This question is probably for Officer Anaya. Can you call police for verbal abuse? If so, what can the police do?
La pregunta es si usted puede llamar a la policía para abuso verbal y si sí, ¿qué se puede hacer?
Okay. So you can call police for verbal abuse.
Sí puede llamar a la policía para el abuso verbal.
That is probably our most common call for service.
Y esa es una de las llamadas más comunes para servicio.
When we go on scene, we will talk to both individuals or whoever's involved.
Cuando vamos al escenario, hablamos con ambos individuos.
We first make sure that it is only verbal and that there are no weapons involved.
Tratamos de asegurarnos que sea solamente verbal y que las armas, no haya armas en el escenario.
Once it is determined only verbal, we try to find out the root cause of the fight.
Cuando es determinada, aunque sí es verbal, tratamos de encontrar la raíz del problema.
And I like to call it a mini therapist session.
A mí me gusta llamarle una mini terapia.
And it's usually someone doesn't trust the other person, and we try to work differences on scene if we can.
Usualmente es porque no hay confianza, so tratamos de hablar en el escenario.
In the end, we usually have the individuals separate for the night so that they can calm down.
Al final tratamos de separar ambos individuos para que tengan la noche para calmarse.
So if you need us to call someone for them to someone to pick them up, or if they want to go to a shelter for the night, sometimes we call taxis for people. We do anything we can to separate the parties for the night.
Hacemos lo que podamos para separar ambos individuos en esa noche. Le tratamos de llamar un taxi, un hogar de refugio, cualquier cosa para que ambos estén separados.
And if the verbal abuse is to the point where it puts it's a threat, they can be charged with terroristic threats as well.
Y si hay una amenaza, entonces puede haber cargos envueltos.
And if we get the call more than 2 times in one night, we can take one of the parties to central booking.
Si recibimos 2 llamadas en esa misma noche, entonces podemos llevar a uno de los individuos.
Thank you.
I actually just thought of another thing from that last question. There's always the option to get a PFA, so protection from abuse.
También en la última pregunta que se hizo, también hay una opción de también tener protección de abuso.
And I believe you guys access will help you as well, and you can just come to the courthouse. There's people that will help you.
Puedes ir a la corte y hay personas ahí disponibles para ayudarte.
And a lot of people think that a PFA has, or protection from abuse has no power.
Muchas personas piensan que ese papel de protección de abuso no tiene ningún poder.
However, I would say that I believe that it is power because it's another thing that you hold over their head.
Pero yo pienso que sí tiene poder porque hay otra cosa que tú tienes en contra del ofensor.
That if they violate that, then they violate their state rule and they're going back to prison.
Porque si violan eso, entonces violan su probatoria estatal y vuelven a la cárcel.
So,
Y lo mantienen alejado.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. And thank you, Officer Anaya, for, go ahead.
I just wanted to add something to the PFA. There is also an emergency PFA where you call 911, speak to the judge on the phone.
También hay protección de abuso que es de emergencia, donde usted puede llamar al 911, hablar con un juez y ellos se lo dan.
And that's 24 hours.
24 horas.
Non-business hours.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. Again, thank you for your answers, and it's really important too. I like that question about verbal abuse because verbal abuse is a form of domestic abuse. So it's, again, really mindful to be just mindful of the different behaviors, whether it's verbal abuse or the checking in, like Kamala said. So thank you. Our next question, does anyone, and this is for anyone again on the panel, does anyone truly and fully recover from abuse?
And we have about 30 minutes, and we have several questions, so, please be mindful of your time and how you answer.
Yes.
La pregunta es si alguien puede recuperar completamente del abuso.
I think that it's a loaded question.
La pregunta
Because it's completely dependent on the person.
porque es dependiendo de la persona.
I think if I could rephrase the question slightly,
Si yo puedo refrasear esa pregunta un poco,
is it possible to fully recover
¿es
from this kind of
posible
abuse?
recuperar de este tipo de abuso?
To that, I emphatically say yes.
Entonces a eso le diría que sí.
I have seen it.
Yo lo he visto,
I have walked with women through it,
yo he caminado con mujeres
and I've done it myself.
y yo lo he hecho yo misma.
And so when you say recover,
So cuando dices recuperar,
it means something different for each person.
significa algo diferente para cada persona.
Excellent. Anybody
So
else want
good.
to
Yeah.
chime in? Anybody else want to chime in before we go to our next question? Okay. Yeah, and I want to thank the audience. We have several questions. That means you all are engaged, and this really means a lot to you all. So
Tenemos
thank you.
varias preguntas y le damos gracias a la audiencia.
Okay, so next question. Is there help for men dealing with domestic violence in the city of York?
Hay ayuda para los caballeros que están lidiando con el abuso doméstico aquí en la ciudad de York.
I will answer that one and say yes.
Yo contestaría esa y diría que sí.
While we're the YWCA, we will serve any victim of domestic violence, sexual assault, or human trafficking.
Aunque somos el YWCA, asistimos a cualquier víctima de abuso doméstico.
They can stay in our shelter. We have options for males in our shelter. We can do counseling.
Tenemos hogares de refugio, tenemos consejerías.
Yeah, we will serve men.
Servimos también a los caballeros, a los hombres.
Outstanding, thank you. Anyone else?
I help. I serve men as well.
Yo también ayudo a los hombres.
I actually used to run a group for male offenders.
También yo he corrido grupos para ofensores que son hombres.
But that's probably another show.
Pero eso es otro programa.
Thank you. It's important to know that the men also have the same rights when it's to pursuing help and for resources.
Es importante saber que los caballeros también tienen el mismo derecho de recibir la ayuda y los recursos disponibles.
Our next question, and this will probably be more geared to those who are offering services. How have the amounts of cases, of domestic abuse cases, changed since starting your services? So maybe something fairly new, I know police department, but maybe there was something that you implemented recently. Have you seen a change?
¿Han visto un cambio desde que han implementado o han tenido casos? ¿Cómo han cambiado los casos de violencia doméstica?
So our agency works with families that have domestic abuse if it's affecting the child.
Nuestra agencia trabaja con familias de violencia doméstica que afectan a los niños.
And with the recent changes over the past few years of the Child Protective Services Law,
Y con los cambios que han habido en la ley de protección de los niños durante los años,
it has defined what could be investigated by our office, which has increased our number of referrals.
eso ha